But let's turn our focus here now. The history of politics in KwaZulu Natal is one entrenched in the legacy of 1912, marked by the formation of the African National Congress. This period is of particular significance in South African political history. The period between 1912 to 1994 saw the emergence of influential ANC leaders from KwaZulu Natal who contributed to the anti-apartheid struggle and the formation of the ANC, from Dr Pixley, kaSeme, John Langa-libalele Dube, Zachariah Keo-direlang Matthews to Albertina Sisulu. Now, to explore this and the so-called politics of Zuluness, we are joined by cultural expert and Heritage Development Trust Executive Director, Professor Musa Xulu. Professor Xulu, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, as the country heads to the polls next year, I think it's important that we discuss this. I mean, an election that has been described as a watershed moment for the country. And as we revisit the shift in politics, particularly in KwaZulu Natal, how would you contextualize the politics of the so-called Zuluness, just looking at the legacy of 1912, which essentially talks to the influence of those leaders from KwaZulu Natal, of which former President Jacob Zuma is a member?
Well, let me thank you very much for this opportunity. The political history of KwaZulu Natal is, maybe we could say, started with the efforts of King Shaka to unite several tribes here to form one Zulu nation. And then it went to King Tingane, who fought against the Boers on the 16th of December, 1838 in Langa-libalele. Then it went to King Pixley, who fought against the English on this 22nd of January, 1879. The king that came after King Pixley started working with the educated ones. That was King Dinuzulu. He started working with educated ones from the mission stations. As you rightly say, there would be John Dube, Pixley kaSeme. Pixley kaSeme almost single-handedly conceptualized the African National Congress as a new initiative that would fight against the oppression of black people and create a new society which would be democratic, which would be inclusive and would not be racist at all. And that has been the mantra of the African National Congress since then. As you said, in terms of leadership, presidents that have come from this province is Dube, then came kaSeme, then came Josiah Kubete, then came Chief Albertina Sisulu, in the old order before what we have now. But then, of course, you will have on the fringes, on the sides of that, also activists like the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the father of the politics of Zuluness, also being very close to those leaders at that time and growing on to say that he has been instructed by Oliver Tambo to start the IFP. Now, the IFP today is seen as having very strong roots in the politics of Zuluness. On the other hand, those who are in the ANC in KZN remains rooted in the thinkings, especially of Inkosi Albertina Sisulu, who was a very strong traditionalist on one side, but at the same time a highly educated man who was of the mission stations and very sophisticated, who then later became a Nobel Prize winner. So you will be able to look at the politics of KZN from those two perspectives. Chief Albertina, Dr. J.L. Dube, Pixley kaSeme, Josiah Kubete, Inkosi Albertina Sisulu, and then Utel is branching to capitalize on the strong Zuluness, which was the product of Shakaism.
Indeed, it was, it is a very rich legacy as you throw it all the way back to King Shaka. I want to just hone in on one of the points that you made in terms of just the style of leadership that we've seen over the years. I mean, I'm reminded by the son of the late IFP president, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, Prince Zuzifa Buthelezi, who said that his father died emotionally concerned about the direction the ANC was pursuing on the one hand, also saying that, his father left the ANC leaders had abandoned. He felt that the ANC leaders had abandoned the party's founding principle, especially those of, just the leaders that we've been talking about, particularly Dr. Pixley, kaSeme, whose principles were founded. What do you make of this sentiment in this context, and particularly looking at just the history of some of those leaders that have been there, 1912 and post, or pre-1912?
Well, they generally mixed modern politics with traditional Zuluness and draw a lot of inspiration from the achievements of King Shaka. You'll remember that in 1928, even outside of the ANC, Dr. Dube was able to work with King Solomon to form what is called Inkatha Yesizwe, which later became the IFP in some way. So they thought that you cannot run politics in KZN without working closely and embracing the rich history, cultural heritage history of the province, starting from the days of Shaka. On the issue of Contextualizing and the ANC, at the end, towards the end of his life, one of the things that he really wanted to achieve was to be brought back to the ANC. Last year, we had a lecture on kaSeme during May, and we invited him as Inkatha Yesizwe, and he came and he had typical Prince Bangosoto. He spoke for about five hours. And one of his biggest regrets towards the end of his life was that he had sent a few delegations to the ANC and even to the House to say, please let us meet. And he was pleading that maybe people like President Thabo Mbeki or President Mahlangu, and he had a specific reservations against former President Jacob Zuma, saying all the time when he raised this issue, former President Jacob Zuma, especially when he was president of the ANC, would block him. Now, he said that in public, it's not coming from me. So you will find that there was not lots of love between him and former President Jacob Zuma based on this point and maybe other points.
And just on that point, Prof, we need to wrap up, but one thing that you just said now, obviously mentioning the influence of the former President Jacob Zuma, I wanted to talk about the recent developments that we are seeing, in the political landscape that is that of KZN, particularly in how the ANC is continuing to influence development there, or is it? Especially if you look at, the context of the IFP, and now with the newly launched MK party, with the influence, as you've just mentioned now, of the former President Jacob Zuma. How are things likely to shake up? Very, very briefly, Prof, if you can.
Well, I can't say IFP people going to join the MK party. It's impossible because they have a history. So it won't happen. The IFP will stay what it is. The ANC and KZN, the people who will go to MK party are people on the fringes. That's why after 8 days of the announcement, there has never been a senior ANC politician anywhere in the country standing up to say we are actually supporting this idea. There is also, of course, the issue of the possible court case around the intellectual property of the ANC in the usage of the name Contextualizing as well as the logo, which falls in the area of intellectual property. There could be an infringement there. So President Jacob Zuma does not have the kind of influence he would have had when he was still president, because, as I said, in terms of Zuluness, Contextualizing is the only one associated with Zuluness. In terms of the ANC seems to have a culture that they don't follow individuals. They follow ANC policies, and they're a collectivist kind of organization. And it's going to be very difficult, except to get the people who are on the fringes and those who like following individuals. But I can't see IFP people going to MK party or ANC, committed ANC people going to MK party. I can't see it happening.
Professor Xulu, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate your context. Professor Musa Xulu, the cultural expert and Heritage Development Trust, and he's the executive director there.